What's up, everybody? It's Dan, Binder Boneyard, coming at you from the shop. Trying another round of video podcasts. The last week I had some technical difficulties, and the videos had to come out in two pieces, and they were not edited. So we are trying this again. Thank you for listening if you are on the podcast platforms, and thank you for watching if you are seeing this on YouTube. Appreciate everybody. And for the people watching on YouTube, you might not know, but I have hundreds of podcasts from years ago. I've been doing podcasts for almost 4 years, or actually over 5 years now. I've been doing podcasts. So if you're new to the podcast here on YouTube, go ahead and hit your favorite podcast platform, whether it be Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple, iTunes, whatever. There's a whole catalog of podcasts there that you can fill your day with. So that being said, thank you, all the Patreon supporters, all the people that donate, everybody that subscribes to the Instagram channel, Instagram page, all that stuff. Every little bit helps. Very appreciated. Again, it costs money to make these. I have a guy that does some of the editing on the audio side and does the legwork of getting them out to the public. So I do actually have to pay to put these out. I know that sounds terrible. And I should figure it out myself, but, I'm already busy enough, and, it's just one more thing to add to the plate. So that being that I'm in the shop, it might sound a little bit different. If you're listening, you may hear some heaters kick on or something. If you're watching online, you can see behind me that, it is snowy, cold. When I came into the shop this morning, it was 1 degree and snowing, and it's been snowing all morning. So yeah, it is cold and miserable outside. So, but being that I'm doing video versions of these now, the shop is a lot better to look at than my dirty office. So anyway, I got an email from a listener who had a question about restoration work. So if you are starting a project, this person pulled a truck out of a field and wanted to know where to start. And there's a lot of sides to that question. Very first thing that you need to ask yourself is, do you have the ability? Do you have the tooling? Do you have the space? Do you have the patience? Do you have the money? That's a very big one that a lot of guys think, oh, I'm doing it myself. I'm going to save a ton of money. Yes and no. You're still paying a machine shop. You're still paying a painter a lot of times, if you want to do it right. You are still paying for stuff. Even if you're just paying for parts and you do every single piece yourself, you're still several $1,000s into it. And you definitely don't want to be that guy on the internet that's like, hey, can anybody send me whatever for free? Or I'd really love some help with one of these. Like, I see it on Facebook pages all the time. Guys are trying to restore a Scout or something, and they're like, I don't have any money. Does anybody want to send me an armrest? Who has an extra window crank that they just want to give away? And it never fails. You see a year later, either the project's not done or it's for sale. It's completed and it's for sale. And they want 30 grand, 50 grand, no low ballers. I know what I got. And so, that's a common thing right now. So, you got to ask yourself, do you have the space? Do you have the capabilities? Do you have the money? And I know there's that, I'm willing to learn. I'm mechanical, so I can figure it out. Well, it's a steep learning curve, just so you know. But the thing I recommend before you start this project is make sure that the rig that you are saving is worth it. I know that sounds weird, but, two-wheel drive, long bed, 1-ton pickups are not the most desirable. They ride the worst. They have some quirks, whatever. Like, probably don't want to start with that truck. Even if it was free, it's still probably not the best thing to start with. But if you've got, half-ton short bed, great. A Scout of any make or model, or of any model or style, great. So yeah, first of all, make sure it's worth it. Second of all, I suggest you buy 2 books. You buy the shop manual, either used on eBay or a new reprint from Binder Books, and you buy the MT book. The MT is the parts manual. And the great thing about the MT book is, even though you can't buy a lot of those parts anymore, or you can't go buy them by that part number, is that the exploded diagrams show you how things go together. Because the service manual, and I don't mean the owner's manual, the little book that goes in the glove box, but I mean the legit, $100 service manual, that service manual is written for mechanics and mechanically minded people and guys that kind of already know what's going on. If you are new, sometimes the service manual overlooks details that you might not know, like, just orientation and things like that. Whereas if you look in the MT book, especially in the interior stuff, the cabs and body sections, there are exploded diagrams of things that really, really help you when it comes to figuring things out when you're putting it together or taking it apart. So I really suggest the shop manual, service manual, and the MT book. And those are both available from Binder Books, or a lot of times you can find them used on eBay or places like that. So I really recommend those 2 resources. And then if you're starting from field find to start the project, do not, and I repeat, do not run out and buy wheels and tires. Every high school kid that I've ever seen or ever known, myself included, and that's why I can say this, you run out and buy wheels and tires, there goes, $1,500 of your budget. And what does it do? It doesn't do anything. All right, you got rollers. Well, it's not going to be rolling around. If you're doing a restoration, you're separating the body, you're pulling the suspension off of the chassis, you are taking it down to the frame. So rollers are the last thing that you need. If anything, if you're trying to convince yourself you need stuff to move around, get you some wheel dollies from Harbor Freight. So that way you can move the thing around your garage or your driveway, and it can be on flat tires. It can be on wheels alone. It can move around easier. I'm assuming that you're doing this in a at least a 2-car garage, if not a 1-car garage with a concrete pad in front of it or something like that. If you're trying to do a frame-off restoration on a gravel driveway outside, you are in for an uphill battle. I'm not saying it's impossible. I mean, my first 3/4 of my career was working on these things on a gravel driveway with a front end loader tractor, doing all of the engine pulling and lifting and that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying it's a lot harder and a lot more work, and it's a lot more effort to keep things clean and working how they should. So that being said, I'm going to skew this description towards concrete floor, concrete pad, something like that. So I would say, instead of buying wheels and tires, get yourself some wheel dollies so that you can move the thing around. But yes, things I consider must-haves. You got to have a cherry picker. Like, really, really need to have a cherry picker. And then it's a good idea to have an engine stand, and a heavy-duty one. International engines are real heavy. If you're going to do this and not use an international engine, you might be able to get away with a cheaper Harbor Freight medium-duty one, but I would say no. You're going to need that cherry picker. I've seen guys pull cabs with cherry pickers, lift beds off. Like, you can do a lot with a cherry picker with creative rigging. So keep that in mind. The cherry picker is a good tool to have. The other thing to think about is, good floor jack. Definitely like 6 to 8 jack stands for various things you're doing. All those are really helpful in getting a good quality product. But when you start this project, I recommend taking it down in pieces. Like, when you roll it into your garage, don't just start tearing apart the interior. Like, take the bed off of it first. That's you get that out of there, get it out of your way. If you're working in the garage and you can store the bed someplace, get it out, outside, get it into your side yard, whatever, wherever you can store it. Then that allows you to get into the rear end. You got rear suspension, you can see everything. Start taking it apart. From there, get the rear end out, springs out, that stuff out. Stash that stuff off to the side in your garage, whatever. And then you move to the front end. Pull the motor. Motor and trans can usually come out in one shot, especially if you take the grill off. Take the hood off, take the grill off. You take it out in one shot. Take the transmission out with it. Normally, transfer case comes out the bottom. If it's a pickup or travel-all. Scouts, you have to take the transfer case off before you can take it out the front, before you can take the drivetrain out the front. Get the front axle out, get that stuff situated, and then start taking sheet metal apart, get it out in pieces. I say that because if you are doing a rebuild, rebuilding the engine, rebuilding all these parts, which you should be in a restoration. If you're taking it to an engine shop, taking it to a machine shop, taking it to a transmission shop, there is a turnaround time that can be long sometimes depending on parts. So rather than start taking the body apart, start doing the interior, and then take your engine in and find out it's going to be 2 months before you get it back, start there. Brake parts are getting harder to find, some depending on the models. So sometimes there's back orders and whatnot. So I recommend doing the mechanicals first because of transmission shop, engine shop, machine shop, back orders, whatever. That way you can get that out, get it to the builder, get it to whoever's going to do the work, so that that's out of your hair and being done while you are working on the next phases, which are, getting the cab apart, interior apart. If you're building the axles yourself, you can do that. But, get the frame, get the cab separated from the frame, clean the frame up. That should be going out for powder coat, or bare minimum, you should be cleaning it, having it sandblasted or something, and then painting it. You could wire wheel it and degrease it. If you're staying, low budget, your results may vary depending on your prep. And that's how all this stuff is. The quality of work comes down to prep and how much effort you put into it. So if you want to wire wheel it and, re-weld some of the things, like if you're doing an 80 or 800, you need to gusset the body mounts, the stuff that notoriously fails, pickups and travelalls. If you've got to grind off any old trailer hitch mounts and things like that, now's the time to do it. So speaking of tools, if you're trying to do this yourself, as much as you can, a good angle grinder, a good high dollar. We use DeWalt's here. I've got 3 or 4, of the $100 DeWalt's with the paddle triggers. You can change between whatever, flap wheels or wire cups or whatever. So a grinder, got to have. An air compressor is important. If you can, to run some air tools, blow things off, that's super helpful as well. So you don't have to have all that stuff, but it sure goes a long ways in the quality of your work and the speed at which you get it done. If you've got a 5-year window, then you can afford to do stuff by hand. If you have an old lady that's screaming at you to get the garage cleaned out so that she can park her car back in there, you're going to want some tooling to get through work faster. So that being said, you're cleaning the frame, either paint it or powder coat it. While that's out, you take care of, get suspension ready, bushings in the new springs, or you're, reusing the springs that are cleaned. Axles, go through them, wire wheel them. If the gears are good, a lot of times, you don't need to do much with them. Again, if you don't know how to set up gears or that needs work, you want to re-gear it from 410s to 354s, those are going to have to go out to a shop if you don't have the skills. So, keep that in mind, the turnaround time on that sort of stuff. So along with just having the stuff to do it, scheduling is important. Lining up the calendar, making sure you get your gear guy to build them to coincide with the frame coming back from the powder coater, having your springs ready, having the steering box built, having cross members done, all that stuff you can have lined up. So when the chassis comes back and the axles come back, you can bolt everything in, making sure you've got the right hardware, all that stuff you can take care of, before the stuff comes back. So that when it does come back, bam, axles go in, all that stuff goes on. And then, if you're having a body shop do the paint and body on it, you can take those pieces loose. Some shops don't like that. That's how we do everything here, is everything goes out loose, because most body shops don't know how to put these things back together. They don't have the books like hopefully you do. So the best thing to do is, take it to them in pieces, totally stripped. And then hopefully, you've got your chassis back. It's on its axles now. Maybe you've run some plumbing, because you can do all that before the body comes back. Then you get the body back. You can drop it on the frame, whether it be with your cherry picker, or some body shops are cool and you take your rolling chassis to their shop and then they'll help you put the body on, or they charge you to put the body onto the chassis. Then you take the whole menagerie back to your house, roll it in your garage, and then you can start assembling. Not assembling, but you can start installing the drivetrain that hopefully is back and painted from the machine shop, get that in. Normally we start wiring them before we put too many body panels on, because it's hard. You don't want to fight the doors while you're trying to, get in and out of the interior. You can lay the engine harness and the front harness on, just rolled up out the front there. You don't have to have it right away. And then, once you've got a lot of the plumbing done, a lot of the stuff ready to go, then you can start putting front sheet metal on. You can start, do the doors. You can do, that stuff towards the end. And then, interior, hopefully you have the seat reupholstered, that kind of thing, and just assemble from there. All of this, like I said, it depends on your budget, how much of work you're doing yourself, and parts availability and things like that. Because if you're farming a lot of the job out, then you really need to get on the calendar with your builders, having the gauges rehabbed, having all that stuff done. You need to really lay out, and then again, if you have a long time frame and you're having all this stuff done, it's not as important. You send the gauges out when you can afford it, have them rehabbed, sent back, send the steering box out, have it rehabbed, whatever. Some of this goes out the window if you're doing aftermarket custom stuff. If you're not building axles, you're buying complete axles from us. If we built you a set of Scout axles, or Curry or somebody, then that speeds up your time frame some, because you're not having to do any of that. You ordered new springs. They usually come with bushings in them, depending on where you buy them from. That saves you some time. If you're doing a repower, you're putting an LS in it or a diesel or something else, you might, you will have done the fabrication part of this, early on, of course, before it went to powder coat. You're going to be doing, and that's the other thing. If you're doing custom stuff like that, you want to kind of build the truck or Scout first, in the raw form, the dirty form, so that if you've got to cut and grind or do anything, you do it all, build it, then you take it all back apart, and then it goes in for, the coatings and the paint and whatnot. So, there's different steps if you are doing aftermarket stuff or modifying it like that. But if you're doing a stock build, then you can kind of figure, hey, it's going to go back together the way it came apart. Some notes to think about. These things are old. I mean, the last Scout was 42 years ago. So, or 44 years ago. What you're working on might not be stock. Something might have got swapped in. Something may have been changed. Something may have, been modified, and you don't know it. And so that's why having the MT book and the service manual is important, so that, you don't rebuild your truck with the wrong parts because they were in there already. And I get calls like that all the time. I had a guy swear up and down he had an international corporate rear end, an RA10, RA11, RA15, whatever. When in actuality, it was a Chrysler 8 3/4. But he didn't know. He thought that's just what it was. So, it took forever to figure out his brake problem, because turns out not international, not something that I had experienced. I don't know a lot about the Chrysler axles. So it's whatever. So keep that in mind when you're starting with an old farm truck, that there's a chance it could have been modified or monkeyed with or broken and re-welded. And so think about that stuff. Pay attention, look at things over, give it a good inspection before you even start tearing it down. Just to think about that. So, and again, your time frame. If you got a ton of sheet metal work to do, if you got a really rusty Scout and the motor's going to take 3 months, that's the perfect time to do body work yourself, all that welding and whatnot. Again, it's just scheduling and the flow. and then like it goes back to the other thing is being honest with yourself. Am I going to work on this every day? Am I going to chop out a weekend a month? How am I going to do this? Am I going to have the space? Is it safe here? Are my kids going to fill the fuel tank with, nuts and bolts when I'm not looking? Like that sort of stuff. You have to be real with yourself and ask yourself, if you want a restored truck, but you don't have the time, get ready to cut that check for 60 grand or whatever. So, again, be real with yourself and, go from there. But hopefully that made some sense. I don't know. I was just rambling. If you're new here, I don't write anything down. I just do these from my mind, my memory. So I'm sure I missed some stuff. I'm sure I overlooked some things. But that's just me rambling for half an hour. And that seems to be the best way to process how my mind processes things. So if you're new, that's how it is. And so, yeah, but, I appreciate everything. Shout out to my dad. My old man watches everything I put on YouTube. So, thanks, Dad. Appreciate it. But anyway, all the Patreon donators, thank you. Everybody else, thank you. If you're new here, thank you for liking, subscribing. Please do that. Tell your friends. Share this around if it was helpful for you. But anyways, again, thank you. Appreciate everybody. And until next time, I'm Dan from Binder Boneyard.